Thank you for joining the Doctor Whisperer. I am your host, Sharon Feckety, and I am happy to bring you a show where we talk about the business of medicine. I hope that you enjoy it. Please feel free to share, subscribe, and pass it on. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. 2023 is upon us, and I'm very happy to have conversations like this one we're going to have today with wonderful female physicians who have decided to give back to us and help us with a wonderful book that I'm going to get into in just a few minutes. But first, I would like to welcome Dr. Hester to the show, who says, just call me Ann in most of her interviews and in her bio, but we're going to give her some cred for all the years that she spent in medical school.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. So Dr. Hester is a board certified internist with a long career of helping people like me and helping people like you that might be watching or listening. But she has written a book called Patient Empowerment 101. And I think it is wonderful to have a resource such as this to offer to others so they can do a better job at being their own advocate. So would you share with the audience just a little bit about your why as to why you decided to write this book now?
I actually started writing this book decades ago. I had the first rendition was called Your Family Medical Record, an interactive guide to getting the best care. And John Wiley and Sons published that in about 2000 or so, because I saw this huge void between how we think and how patients think. And I just really wanted to address that. But decades ago, people really were not into empowering themselves as much. The doctor would tell them what to do, and they essentially did it. And that was based on our very paternalistic healthcare system. So the book ultimately went out of print. And recently, I've noticed that there has been a renewal, a serious determination on the part of patients to empower themselves and to learn what they can do and to take new steps into being an empowered patient. And so 2 months ago, I thought, let me just go ahead and rewrite this. I took some of the best parts of that book and added another 20 years of clinical practice. And I wrote Patient Empowerment 101, More Than a Book, It's an Adventure.
I love it. So why don't we talk about some of the highlights of this book, some of the chapters. You know, I have written a book myself, and I knew when I was writing this book that I had to draw people in from chapters in my book so people could relate. So why don't we go through some of the names of the chapters in your book so people can get an idea what they're going to read?
I have to pull it out because the exact names on these chapters, I'm not sure.
How many chapters are there?
I think about eight.
Good for
Eight
you.
chapters. The first one is see eye to eye with your doctors. Now, the significance of understanding the concepts in that, I mean, that's huge. Doctors cannot just charge whatever they want to charge when you go to see the doctor. They are bound by National Evaluation and Management guidelines, E&M guidelines. And so when a doctor submits a bill, there needs to be a strong correlation between the guidelines and what they have documented. Otherwise, they could be charged with insurance fraud for overbilling. And so I go through the different steps, the things that are really important for people to understand. Now, we go to medical school, we spend all this time with science, and sometimes medical terms and all of these things, we're just so used to them, we don't stop to think, this person sitting on the examining room table is not going to understand this. And so that is one of the voids. But I discuss the significance of preparing for your business in advance. For instance, these guidelines give 8 key elements of your history. So when you first get sick, you should start thinking through these elements. They are, number one, severity. Patients often say, it hurts a lot. I don't know what that means. A person can say, I'm in 10 over 10 pain while he's texting, watching TV, which I've had before. That's not 10 over 10 pain.
Right.
So the severity is important, the exact location. If you say my belly hurts, I don't know, do you mean you're having appendicitis, gallbladder attack? What does that mean? Doctors divide the abdomen into quadrants: right upper, right lower, left upper, left lower quadrants. There are different organs. And so be specific, whether it's your leg, your belly, your chest, or whatever the case may be. Start off being specific. That way, the doctor does not have to ask as many questions.
Right.
The duration.
Okay.
How long have you endured this? So you may say, doctor, this first started 3 months ago. You've endured it for 3 months. That's a little different from the timing. So each time it happens, it lasts 2 days. So the duration and timing are very important. The quality. A sticking, prickly, knife-like pain says something different to a doctor than a sharp pain or a squeezing pressure pain. That makes the doctor think of other things, modifying factors. What makes it better? What makes it worse? If you take an aspirin for your headache and in 30 minutes you're completely better, that says something different than if you take multiple medicines over the course of several hours and get no relief.
Right.
The context. If you pick up a heavy sofa and you develop severe pain, you say, Doc, I have this severe back pain, but it started right after I picked up a heavy sofa. That is giving the doctor the context. And so the 8 key elements are vital, because not only does the doctor need to document these things, but it will help the doctor hone down the likely diagnoses. And when he's able to do that, he won't need to order as many tests or procedures to get to the bottom line, which means you get a quicker diagnosis, fewer tests and procedures, fewer return visits. So it's just a win-win for everybody.
I like it. All right, let's go on to the next chapter.
Okay, so the next chapter is prepare for your appointment. And so there are various things that you need to do, including what we just discussed. And also you need to prioritize your issues. If your doctor has 10 people in the waiting room and you have a list of 8 things and you only have 5-6 minutes with the doctor, you don't want the most important thing to be the last thing, because he may say, we're out of time. Can you make another appointment? They're like, wait a minute, I didn't get to what I wanted to address. So prioritize your concerns. Make sure you have everything that you need. If it's a new visit, have your medical records with you, your insurance card. I go through a variety of things to be able to prepare yourself to see the doctor before you even step foot in the office. And I have questionnaires in the book. There are questionnaires for 11 common symptoms: abdominal pain, fevers, diarrhea, things along those lines. And so when you go through the questionnaires, you will learn the frequently asked questions that the doctor is going to want to know. When a person has abdominal pain, there are specific things that we want to know. And if you don't think about them and you're sitting on an examining room table, cold, angry that the doctor is an hour behind, thinking I've got to get back to work, you're not going to be able to relay all of the pertinent things. Well, I never thought about it, haven't paid attention. Once I timed the patient, I asked her a yes or no question. It took her 10 minutes to answer the yes or no question. And so the purpose of having these questionnaires is so if you develop abdominal pain, diarrhea, any of these common things, back pain, chest pain, and so forth, as soon as you develop the symptom, you pull out the book, you go through the questionnaire, and you start paying attention to the things the doctor is going to want to know. So you don't say, oh, I really haven't paid attention to that. So you're able to actually explain what's going on quickly, give a little elevator speech, so to speak, when you walk into the doctor's office and help.
Right. Well, isn't it sad, doctor, that we have to get to a place that we have to be super prepared before we get to the visit? That's the truth of it, right? So if this is a podcast about the business of medicine, so for some people that might not understand why this is the way it is today, most physicians just are not granted the amount of time that is required to get to understand your entire life's history. And most people don't realize how easy it is for them to access your own medical records. So you had mentioned that you should bring your own medical records, but I'll tell you what, I would say 95% of people out there don't think that they are allowed to have them. So everybody today, electronic health records has not been the most exciting thing for physicians to, turn a lifetime of medical charts into a computer. There's so many different electronic health records that if there was one thing I know my physicians are most aggravated about, it's that they have to spend a lot of time with technology. They did not go to medical school to spend all of their time behind a computer. So it is very, very useful for the physician that you are seeing to have access to the medical records. I think, one of the things that a lot of patients misunderstand is that, well, my doctor should have the notes. So I want everybody to remember that there is this word that you should really pay attention to if you call a medical office or you are at a medical office and you hear the word fax. Okay. Now, if you are just listening and not watching this episode today, you would know that Dr. Hester is laughing, and that is the truth. So fax is the word fax is typically only used in healthcare today. We have gone way, way more advanced in the world of technology, but faxes are key. So if somebody has to fax over your medical records before the visit, or it's not there before you get there, you have more problems, and you need this book way more than you realize. So I would like to, because, this is a podcast about the business of medicine. So a lot of physicians that listen to this podcast are entrepreneurs, are thinking about leaving corporate and moving into a space where they can spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes with the patient, or imagine an hour. So what I'd like to get to is this whole medical records. I think it's important that people understand the reason I got into the business of medicine, yes, it's to help physicians navigate through their businesses, but ultimately, if I'm doing that, it's going to help the patient.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about how we can help those patients. So I'm sure you just love electronic health records. I'm sure you were so excited when they said to you, guess what?
It was hard at first.
But now, right? Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of positive behind them as well. You can actually read the other doctor's writing. Yeah. That's important.
That's a major benefit.
Huge.
It's huge. For you especially, right? Because you have to distinguish what another physician has said before you get the reports from the cardiology or the gynecologist. So can we talk about that chapter where you do speak about gaining the health records? Because I think that is really an unknown.
Yes, you do have a right to access your health records. And this chapter, it's one of the longer chapters in the book because it goes through the significance of health records, and I give a lot of charts, everything from your medical history, your social history, not social media history, but your social history, like tobacco use, alcohol use, and so forth, your family history, hospitalizations, allergies, and so forth. And so it's very important. From my standpoint, I think everybody needs to have a copy of his or her own medical record. So yes, your doctor has a copy. So what happens when your employer changes companies? And so the following week or the following month, you don't have access to that doctor anymore. So you need a copy of your records for yourself. And one thing that I suggest in that book is that you get a 3-ring binder and you get tabs. And I actually created a website. It's called patientempowerment101.com.
Love it.
If you have the book, then you'll get the URLs, the pages to the internal part of the website where you can go, you can download all of these forms. They're fillable, they're Word forms. So you download, for instance, allergies, and you can fill it in on the computer. You can save it, you can print it. So you print it, you go through all of the different parts of the medical record and you print them, and you develop your own concise medical record. And I give you all the forms that you need from regular records. Certain things there are no forms for that I do tell you to get.
Or you keep it on a thumb drive so we could save some of the trees out in the world. We don't print all of them, everybody.
Not all the time, but sometimes it's good to have a hard copy.
Keep them on a thumb drive, everybody.
You can do that actually because they're fillable, they're savable forms. So whatever you save with the computer, you can certainly put on a thumb drive and keep with you.
Yes.
So by having your own records, for instance, if you go to see a specialist, you want to see a cardiologist, and you don't have your old EKG or the ultrasound of your heart or anything else, the doctor is going to say, okay, sign this, let me fax it over.
Fax.
I've had so many fax nightmares, I'm sorry. They just don't seem to get to me when I really want them.
Of course, because it's so antiquated.
Exactly.
My God, it's like caveman time.
Mm-hmm. And if the fax machine is broken or out of ink, or the paper falls on the floor and they have to fax it again and again, you could be waiting for a long time to get those old records. If you walk into the doctor's office and like, here it is, and you have your echocardiograms, your EKGs, all of these things right in your hand, then the doctor can access what's important immediately and move forward with your care instead of saying, okay, I need to get your old records, make an appointment to come back to see me in 2 weeks. That's not where we are now. We need to be at a point that people become empowered to do what they need to do to expedite their own care in a way that will decrease their medical costs, help the doctors help them expeditiously. That can help minimize waste in the system. And that's huge because we're looking at a potential shortage of physicians of well over 100,000. The American Association of Medical Colleges is predicting that by 2034, we could be short close to 48,000 doctors, primary care doctors, and 71,000 plus specialists. So if you think that the medical visits are short now, just imagine how short they're going to be in the future. So you need to be able to expedite your own care and be empowered to do so with the right tools.
That is correct. So now I will share something personal that I've talked about before. And this wonderful physician who has said yes to come on the show today, I'm sure has never experienced anything like this, nor would condone it. But I myself was, it's in my chart right now that I have hyper irritability. And for those of you who don't know about what's happened in the world with women over the last few centuries, we were getting diagnosed with some stuff because we were, strong-minded, had an opinion, speak up for ourselves, are our own advocates, come with information. And sometimes you might not get an agreeable physician with you, and you might get one like I got, who was very, very annoyed that I was speaking up for myself. So I think this conversation could be almost the most conversation that I've had in a long time, that if you really want to have a great experience in a physician's office, whether it be internal medicine, cardiology, OBGYN, you really do have to be your own advocate.
Yes.
Come with your own records. And there's another point that you make in your book that I think is really, really important, especially for the elderly. Let's not say elderly. Let's say wise population.
Seasoned, yes.
There you go. The very seasoned. Yes. I like it. Yes. How wonderful it is when you can have an advocate. Can we talk about patient advocacy?
Are you still running your medical practice like it's 1990? Well, what about Riva Global Medical Virtual Assistants? A medical virtual assistant, I promise you, is the way to run your medical practice today. Why? Because you can save, thousands of dollars. No more paying for health insurance, no more worrying about office space. You also have trained professionals. These wonderful human beings get trained, and they have a client service manager that makes sure that your VA that you're working with for your practice is hitting all the goals that you need to make sure that your practice is run efficiently and friendly. Check out Riva Global Medical Virtual Assistants today.
Are you tired of the one-on-one grind? You want to break free from the brick and mortar practice and work from anywhere? Ready to impact more lives, work less, all while making more money? Sound too good to be true? It's not. You can actually learn how to do all of this and more at the first annual In This Together live event that's happening in Orlando, Florida on February 20th to the 22nd, 2023. Join your host, Dr. Kylie Burton, and other world-class speakers for an event unlike any other you've attended. And it's for practitioners only. These tickets will sell out, so grab yours quickly. We will provide the link to this event in the show notes. Click.
Yes, it is extremely important to have an advocate for your care because doctors go to medical school, patients don't go to patient school.
Right.
And so they're often left out there really not knowing how to navigate the system. You need somebody who can speak up for you. You need somebody who understands you, who can express your wants and needs to the healthcare providers. And also, there are professional patient advocates out there, and you can Google patient advocate near me. So there are people who are highly trained in advocacy, whether it's a matter of looking at your medical bills, explaining the bills to you, looking at your records and saying, this is what I recommend, and we can move forward this way, or you shouldn't be doing this. So you have somebody who has experience who is in your corner. And a lot of people are not aware of the patient advocacy option. And so that's very important. Even if you don't pay for a patient advocate, whether it's your spouse or a close friend or relative, you need somebody in your corner. Yes. And going back to the issue that you said about what was documented in your chart, you do have a right to get your records. And when you think about what was written in your chart, it's important to know those things, because if any physician is continuing to document something unfavorable, you need to realize that at some point, somebody else is going to get those records. You're going to see a new doctor, and that doctor may have a tainted view of you if you have this repetitive documentation that you're hardly along with, whatever the case may be. If you do not see eye to eye with your doctor, you have the option of getting another doctor. And
always true.
That's important for people to understand that they need to be the center of their healthcare team. And if you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, you cannot be your best advocate, and you cannot effectively play the role that you're meant to play.
And you also have to think about it in terms of your life insurance later. If you don't have life insurance, you should have it. But guess what they're looking at? They're looking at your health records. So it's really, really important. I never thought in my 20 plus year career in the medical industry, where I have been an advocate for others myself and really feel like I have a tremendous understanding of how the system works. When it happens to you personally, you will make sure it never happens again. And you will hopefully tell other people, like you're doing, sharing some of the wonderful tips about how to navigate your own healthcare. Patient advocacy is amazing. I mean, I remember the first time I took my mother-in-law, going back years ago, she had broken her ankle or broken her toe, and she had to go to the orthopedist. And this poor woman, I mean, they gave her an iPad. And I mean, talk about a fax. You were going from a fax to an iPad in a quick minute, right? And she didn't even know how to navigate through it. And if I wasn't there, I don't know how she would have gotten through that visit, because they were very serious about, no, this is the way it goes, and there's no more, writing things down. So it becomes harder, I think, for these seasoned patients, especially, because technology, although it's great, it can cause a real, yeah. So that patient advocacy is really, really important. What else from your book do you think we could share with the audience today?
I want to say one more thing about the advocacy. I have quotes from multiple providers in the book, and two of them are actually from patient advocates who give tips to the readers.
Wonderful.
Another very important issue is being safe in the hospital. People don't realize what they could do differently to improve their safety. A lot of people die in the hospital every year. For instance, when you go into the hospital and you're lying in bed a lot, you have an increased risk of developing blood clots. Blood clot typically starts in your leg and then breaks up and goes to the lungs. The first sign of a blood clot could be a fatal cardiac arrest. And there are things that can be done to decrease the risk of blood clots. And when people don't realize the significance of getting that little shot in the belly, or putting the pumps on the legs, or walking around, or whatever the doctor has recommended, then they put themselves at risk. One thing that I do recommend when you go into the hospital, ask, what's the plan to decrease my risk of blood clots? There are systems in place, but systems fail. And so if it is not clarified or ordered what your prophylaxis is to decrease your risk, you take the bull by the horn and ask, how are we decreasing my risk of blood clots? Another thing is people who have catheters in the bladder or the hospital, they don't want to get up and go to the bathroom. It's convenient, but that increases your risk of a urinary tract infection.
Oh,
Urinary tract infections can spill over into the bloodstream, which can cause septic shock and can kill you. You don't want a bladder in the catheter unless you really need it. If the doctor has cleared you to get up and walk around, go to the bathroom. If you would rather have a bedside commode, ask for a bedside commode. But as long as it's safe for you to get up and move around, please do so. Don't have that catheter in. Another thing is the IV lines, particularly if you have a central line, a large IV line under the collarbone or elsewhere, you want to make sure that area is clean. You don't want to be fiddling with the bandage up there or doing other things that will increase the risk that bacteria can get into that catheter, into the bloodstream, and that's another potential cause, unnecessary cause of death. So safety in the hospital is huge. And when you go to the hospital, you need to clarify what your status is. Do not assume that when you go to the hospital, you are considered admitted to the hospital. You can be in a hospital room next to a roommate who is admitted, but you may be in the observation status. And that means your bill can be significantly higher. And it's much more complicated than the doctor choosing, I'm going to admit this nice person to the regular status and this other person, observation. It doesn't work that way. There have to be certain criteria that are met. And so you want to know if you're in the observation status or if you're a true inpatient. That has a tremendous impact on what your bill could be. So those are other things of significance.
I love this. You're making me think of all of these unbelievable things that I feel so blessed to already know, working in the industry so long. But, even just a lot of people think that they have an RN working with them and it is a medical assistant. And there's nothing wrong with medical assistants, but don't, it's funny. It sparked this thought because I was listening to another episode that you were on, and the host, didn't understand what an internal medicine physician was, and you explained it wonderfully. And anybody that's listening to the show, if you don't know, it's too bad. You're going to have to Google that. We're not going to have that conversation today, but really understanding what is an internal medicine doctor, what's the difference between, primary care or, know who you're going to see. The amount of people today that don't understand the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist is alarming, to say the least. So I think it really is. I think that this resource that you have graciously written about and provided for all of us, coming from the physician perspective, but really hoping that the patients get more educated when they come in. And, because knowledge is power, people.
Absolutely.
And your healthcare, actually, this might be shocking to you, is important.
Life-saving.
Life-saving.
Yes.
And I am quite sure that you could write a book on all of the things in patients that could have been avoided, with prevention, following the proper nutrition, exercising, all of the things. And I would assume that this book came out of you because you have witnessed so much in your career as a physician.
You're brilliant. That's how I got started in patient empowerment. I saw so much unnecessary suffering and death. I actually started writing patient education information and I was a third-year medical student.
Mm.
So when we had time off, my partners, my classmates were out partying. I'm like, I've got to figure out how to make this work. So I've got to educate people. So you're right on target.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really important. So just so you all know, I have encouraged Anne to record this book so more people get their hands on it, because we do
it.
Good. Well, we need more physicians like you to help patients really understand. To me, it's just fascinating. I've heard everything you can imagine. I've heard it in my own family about what they actually think. They all think, you guys are just going to med school. It doesn't cost that much. And you have a Porsche and a house in the Hamptons and 9 different vacation homes, and you go skiing. That's what they all think. Now, if you knew the reality of the medical practice and the operation and the administration and the hiring and all that goes into the codes and the ICD-10. Oh my God, if I did not want to die listening to ICD-9 to ICD-10, I just...
Interesting reading.
Snooze fest, people. A total snooze fest. It is amazing though. And, physicians only get a certain amount of time with you.
Yes.
Now, listen, most of the physicians that I work with are integrative medicine doctors. They have broken out of corporate. They have opened their own practices. They're doing things a little bit different. But 95% of people are following their insurance card. So if you follow your insurance card to go see a physician, you have a responsibility to get educated before you get there. We're going to tell the people today that it's their responsibility to get educated.
Absolutely. You have to empower yourself. This is one of the most important things that you could even imagine. You spend a lot of time preparing for retirement, researching the stocks and bonds and everything. When it comes to your health care, that should be at the top, because you may not make it to retirement if you're not healthy. And
you can say goodbye to that stock when you're dead.
Exactly. If you're in retirement, you're so sick, you can't enjoy, you can't take those trips. What was the point? So the priority should be on your wellness, your health, and just focus on that and what you can do differently. We don't have to be so far apart as far as the way doctors think and the way patients think. We should be working together as a well-oiled machine, because we're all in it for you.
Yeah. Physicians, I've been a bodyguard for physicians for so many years, and I really feel so strongly about how so many physicians have gone into the business because they really want to help people. But if the patients would take the time to understand how much time they really have at each visit and how many other actual humans are in the world that might be there that day. I remember hearing, there'd be an ambulance out in the parking lot. There'd be a room full of patients that were sick. And, you always get that one that's like, when am I going to get to see the doctor?
One.
I know. One that day that I could think of, right? One that says, like, how long is it going to take? Like, have you seen the ambulance? So it's a lot, but I really think that the work that you're doing is very, very important. Is there anything that you want the audience to know before we say goodbye today? Because as you know, not only are the medical visits short, but the attention span of humans are short today. So we can't do too long of a podcast show anymore.
Sure. I would just reiterate what you said about empowering yourself. There is no real patient school. What I try to do in this book, Patient Empowerment 101, is to give you the tools that you need to put yourself at the center of your healthcare team. And I would ask that when you learn these things, that you share them with somebody who doesn't have the book, so we can all learn and we can all grow. Because with this impending healthcare shortage of physicians that's potentially catastrophic, we all have to work together to preserve our healthcare system.
That is the truth. Well, thank you so much for all you do. We will have the link to the book, and we'll have you back when you have recorded your Audible book and everybody can get it on Audible. And thank you so much for all that you do to help others.
Thank you.
So if you want to party like it's 1999, but run your medical practice like it's 2022, don't forget to check out Riva Global Medical Virtual Assistants.
Don't forget to grab your tickets to the first annual In This Together live event in Orlando, Florida, happening on February 20th to the 22nd, 2023, with your host, Dr. Kylie Burton. Grab your tickets now, link in show notes.